Welcome back to another episode of Successfully Unsuccessful Podcast. I'm your host here in St. Michael, Minnesota. Today, I have a great friend and core counsel slash, I actually can't even say that. I call it core counsel because that's what mine group is called. CBMC, former CBMC Trusted Advisor Forum member, Connor Piche. How you doing, brother? Nice to see you.
Doing great. Yeah, thanks for having me.
So how many years have you been involved in that ministry, in the peer advisor group that we've been in? 3-ish years?
2.5 or 3. Yeah, I think
awesome.
we're coming up on 3 years. Yeah.
So officially, I think the youngest guy in the group.
Yes.
Right?
Yep. Yeah. I always say I'm the resident millennial in the group. So.
That's true. And I was that guy for a minute. So why don't you do a quick introduction as the youngest guy?
Yep.
That's not your introduction. So why don't you tell us quickly, wife, how many kids, and what your business is, and we'll get after this thing.
Yeah. So, Connor Piche. I live in Richfield with my wife and 4 kids. So my wife, Cassidy, and then my oldest son is 6. His name's Oren. Then I have a 4-year-old daughter, Hazel, 2.5-year-old daughter, Lucy, and then our youngest is a 10-month-old girl, Cora. So, busy house.
Busy house.
Yeah, it's fun. I run a small business called Scuba Weed Control. So we do lake weed removal, cattail removal, pond cleaning, lakeshore, cleaning services. That's what we do.
That's right. The riches are in the niches. And what's awesome, and I knew this, but I didn't realize how long it was that you've been doing this forever. Literally like 10, almost, will be year 11.
This will be year 11, yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah.
And so the idea of this business came back in the day in college, and I love a good old-fashioned startup, but the idea of your great lakeshore, right, is infested with weeds that impact your ability to just enjoy the lakefront, right? And so you see an opportunity, get Scuba certified, to be able to build a business and pull these leads. You got equipment, you got a team. So really high level, in a summer, you're basically going to town on this thing, right? You built this business from scratch. Give us some context. How many houses that are on lakes that are you seeing in a season? What does the season go from and to?
Yeah, so our season really operates like May through October. It used to be way more condensed than that. When we started the business, my brother and I started it back in college. So in 2014 was our first year that we went out and started doing it on our own. Started it just knocking on doors, and it was really small scale back then. I mean, we probably did like 20 to 25, maybe 30 jobs a summer. We loved it. We were just 2 college kids, making a couple $1,000
That's extra
a summer.
side money, right? 25, 30 jobs. Like, hey, this thing is working.
Yeah. We felt like we were rich back then. Like, it was enough to, help chip in with like school, and, had some good spending money, and it was a fun summer gig. So that's really how it started. And so I ran it with my brother for 2 or 3 years, and then he graduated college before I did and moved out of state, and I hired my cousin, ran it with my cousin for a couple years, and then I got married right out of school and got a full-time job right out of school, and I still kept the business alive on the side. Like, it was always something I was just so passionate about it, and I couldn't let it die. And we had a book of business now built up to maybe it was like 40 or 50 clients at that point, and so I would I wouldn't do any marketing or any promo or anything like that, or wasn't trying to get new sales, like new leads or anything like that, but we would reach back out every summer to our book of business, and like anybody that needed our help, we would help them. So I was working a full-time job. I was a recruiter for almost 4 years and running it on the weeknights and the weekends of the summer, and it was just one of those things like right now, this is the time of year, end of April, where it's starting to get nice, and I get the itch to get the gear out and get back in the lakes. So it was 2021 was the first year where I stepped out and decided to try doing it full time. And back then I really didn't have any context for what it could be, and didn't know if it was something that could provide for a young family, because we had a young growing family, and it was we'll give it a shot. And it was that first year, it was just me in the water, so I was the only one doing it. I did 100% of the jobs by myself, and then I had one guy that was helping me haul the weeds, so get him from the dock up to the trailer. So that's how it started.
How many did you do just that summer by yourself?
I'd have to look back at the log.
What's your guess?
How many jobs?
Yeah.
I would guess, I don't know, maybe like 80.
Holy
like that.
cow!
70
So
or 80.
even
Yeah.
you and your cousin or you and your brother put that to shame.
Oh, yeah.
Because you were
Yeah.
all in, right? You're
For sure.
going morning to night.
Yep.
And this is probably, well, you had a couple young kids, I suppose, at the time even, right? But your
Yep.
first time going all in on your own. Okay, so when did you decide to get serious and say, I'm going to build a business on this? So that year you did it all on your own. You had a helper.
It was kind of a trial year.
Yep.
Yeah. So actually I had two guys. I had one guy that worked for me Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and they're both buddies of mine. And one guy that worked like Tuesday, Thursday for me, like in the mornings.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to out him by saying his name because he had another job. Like he was the software sales guy, and he had another job, but he could like work his schedule to a way where like he had the flexibility to help me in the mornings. He'd show up and grind, and you know he'd be like just so muddy and dirty and like sweaty by the time that
and then
he'd
he'd
get back.
Jump on and say, "Hey, this is Steve."
Yeah,
you know,
he's like, I always take my first call like not a Zoom call, not a video call, because
I'm full
like,
of mud.
covered in
That's
mud.
hilarious.
Yeah, and so he'd go back and shower and then be ready for his day. So like,
Yeah.
I have to give a ton of props to those guys. They helped me get it off the ground, and then I would say I still didn't really believe in it after that first year. Like I think I made like 45 grand that first year. I'm like, okay, that was fun. Like can't feed a family off that. Like have like, but again, I was like,
Granted, seasonal, right?
Seasonal,
very
yep.
seasonal.
Yep, yeah. But it was just like I just still didn't know. Like I was like, that was fun. Don't know if I'm going to do it again. I ended up getting a software sales job, and really thought it could be something that was more of a long-term fit. And one thing led to another. So this was after that first summer, you know, fall, winter,
Gotcha.
and then spring again. And it was like honestly just like God opening and closing doors. But that job, like the leader of our office here, like in the United States, it was a company that was based out of Denmark, but they had a local presence here in the Twin Cities. And our executive that ran the whole Twin Cities office, she resigned. And really when that happened, it was kind of like a domino effect of we had maybe 12 or 15 people in the Twin Cities office, and I think like there was like 8 people that either were fired or resigned right after that, like in the 2 months after that. And so when she put in her like notice and she called me, I remember just being like, I remember thinking like in that moment, I'm like, I think I'm going to go back to my scuba business and like really like give it a go.
Wow.
And so I did. And that was the first year where I made my first like full-time hire for the season. And again, like God just like blessed me. The guy that I found, still a good friend of mine today. He's been with me now. This will be like his 4th year. He's coming back to help out in more of a limited capacity this year, but he was my first full-time hire. Great guy, great worker. Did a good job. Then the next year I promoted him into a management role. And as we kept growing, the business kept growing. He kept like just being there with me.
Taking on more.
Yeah, taking on more. And so yeah, that's how I got led back to like, all right, I'm going to try this again. And we doubled after that first year, and we've doubled every year. And, you know, to the point that, you know, we're just, you know, continuing to see growth. And so we've added, you know, we opened up our first shop down here in Eden Prairie in 2023, had a team of 7 in 2023. And then last year we opened up a shop up in Brainerd. So we had a crew running out of Brainerd.
No brainer. I mean, no pun, almost a pun intended there. No Brainerd. No, definitely Brainerd.
Yeah.
It was a no brainer to go to Brainerd.
Yeah.
That's incredible. So that you launched a new site last year, right?
Mm-hmm.
And obviously enough opportunity, enough lakes there to want to go back and do that. Now, continuing to think about how is your role changing, right? Because like literally you've been the original weed picker, right? Having to invest in people and equipment. And we've talked a few times about different equipment and become more efficient. You've had to learn the sales and marketing hat, the paid search, the SEO, right? So as you're figuring this out, like how is your involvement now as you've grown this business, elevating yourself to the sweeter spots of running a business, but also the not so sweet spots? What are you learning about being a business owner that you're really liking? Like, because I think that's the key here is anyone listening that often starts a business, it's not glamorous. It doesn't even have to be. It's like literally starting. You are the first guy, right? And then over time, you're doing these things, you're learning it. That's our faith. That's being a husband. That's all of us in this journey. We're just growing with what the opportunities are.
Yeah, that's really well said. I mean, that's exactly what it is. It's like growing as the business grows, like learning on the fly, building the plane as you fly it.
100%.
Like that's exactly what it is. And you know, for me, I'm just the type of guy I've always been like, let's just like jump in with both feet and like we'll figure it out as we go. And like, you know, thankfully God's got grace. Like I see it the same way, like with my family, with my kids. Like I'm like, hey, you know what? I'm not 100% prepared for this. If I wait around to the point where I'm 100% prepared and understand the whole,
then I'll never
landscape,
start.
I'll never start. So it's like action first is kind of like been my mindset, but like at the same time, yeah, I mean, I've really grown. And my role has changed, obviously, throughout the years. Like last year, we had a team of 16. And so for the first year, I think it was really really focusing on, the team management and training and, kind of integrating core values and really being, like finding my leadership style, my management style. And I started finding that first year when we had a team of 7, but that was really like a fake it till you make it type of thing. Like never had done it before, didn't know how to delegate, didn't know how to, implement any systems. It was like, and even today, I mean, we're growing and like the systems are changing, things are changing, our pricing model's changing, the way that we sell is changing, the way that the teams run is changing. It's just every year we're growing and improving. But I would say, now the nice part is that I have a couple of guys with me that are returning. I have my Brainerd manager coming back. So the guy that is in charge of our shop up there and really helps run the crew, but runs the whole show up there. He's coming back. And so last year it was like square one with him. And like he had some industry experience in the past, really good worker, really good with like the fine details. And now it's like, hey, how do we not just have you running that shop, but how can we give you more responsibility and have you take over, more of the business? So, because for me, it's like, I just want to keep focusing on the things that are the highest return on investment and best use of my time. And
learning to elevate, right? And delegate some of these other things. So what would you say now, the elevator pitch in your business, Scuba Weed Control, right? What is the solution you guys are solving and who's your ideal customer? So for those that are obviously lake homeowners as well, and, for the purposes of just being able to create value in the environment you're in, this particular area of like taking care of your property. What is the value of your service and what can people expect working with you?
Yeah, it's a good question. And it's something I'm glad you asked because like we've really been, again, like focusing on like what are our core values and what's like our mission statement. And like, so for me, running like the EOS model, like my mission, regardless of Scuba Weed Control or like my family or any other business that I want to run is my goal is to impact people for God's kingdom. So that's my passion and our niche at Scuba Weed Control. And the value add is we are creating access to open, safe, clean, usable water.
Love that.
It's, in the past, like the first couple of years I ran the business, I'm like, people won't pay thousands of dollars for somebody to go out there and pick their weeds or clean the weeds off their lakeshore. But people will pay thousands of dollars when they buy a new cabin or buy a place on the lake and they get there and they realize, oh my goodness, like we didn't realize that the weeds have literally, we can't swim. They've choked out a path like where we can't get the boat out. We can't fish. We can't do all the things that we like dreamed of doing. And then that's where our value prop comes in. It's like, hey, we create access to open, safe, clean, usable water. Like you get to, it's a quality of life thing for those people. And so now I'm just to the point where I'm like, okay, people will pay thousands of dollars for that. And so I think it's that mind shift. And really for me over the years, understanding a deeper layer of like, what is the value we bring 100%. To customers? And like our ideal customer, in the past, it was like just anybody that was on a lake. And now it's like, it's different too. Cause we are the premier option. There is always that kid down the street that has a rake and a truck that, that's how we started. So it's not like,
and let him continue.
Right. Exactly. Right? And so there's that option for clients. And then there's we're the high touch, high service, high return on investment, but we're going to be, the highest, cheapest. We're not the cheapest. So, our ideal customer is people that understand that value prop and, it could be lakes or ponds. Like, and that's another area we've grown and where I didn't understand there was opportunity was like, there's a lot of ponds out there and like some people live on these ponds and to them, it's the same as living on a lake and there might be fish in the pond and they want it, or maybe it's just like, hey, we want a clean, view to the pond and we don't want it being all scummy and choked out with cattails and like we want the ducks to come like make nests in there like we can't even see it and so they'll pay just as much as somebody that lives on Lake Minnetonka or lives on Gull Lake or whatever. So
that's incredible. So there's a lot of segues here. You're building teams, you're developing people, coaching people up. Obviously they're seasonal, and so there's a time to really fly in the summer, right? And obviously now elevating yourself. Hopefully you're able to spend a little bit more time and get some of that time with your family back, because I know your wife and handling 4 kids in the summer is a lot going on, and we've talked about this before. But when you entered into kind of a peer advisory advisory group, you're at that cusp of like, I really want to pour into my business and, turn it into a real company. And it's something to be, to have a job and then turning a job, a self-employed job into a company.
Right.
And I can tell by the way you're investing in not only your personal leadership, but obviously it sounds like you've hired an EOS implementer. I'm going to shout out to a mutual friend named Mr. Josh.
Yeah, Josh Schrock. Yeah.
All right. Well, I can hear it in the way you're able to articulate your vision and mission. It's incredible, dude.
Yeah. Thank you.
So now one thing, just pointing back to, like, as you're running and gunning and elevating, like, how are you able to preserve now your time to think about, like, okay, yes, this is the season to make money, but then you're running into the fall, you're maybe have some capacity. Is it completely on in the summer still, and then your family doesn't get much of you, or is there this balance yet? How are you working through that right now?
It's such a good question, and yeah, it's like I don't have like the perfect blueprint for it right now, because, like, if we're being honest, last year I was like, my family didn't see me in June, you know, and like think about like the weeks of like the end of May and leading up to the 4th of July, that's like our peak season. Yeah. And we have to make, 50 to 60% of our annual revenue in that month and a half. And so, last year we got to the point where, like, I was booking enough jobs where we couldn't keep up with it, and we were promising these things. And like for me, like our first core value is integrity and reliability and everything. So if we book these clients, we tell them the job's going to be done by a certain day. That job is getting done. Yeah. Like that's we take business from competitors that they just don't show up, and they don't even like communicate. And so for us, it was like we got to a point where we were so busy, and I had my crews kind of running to the point where like I couldn't send them out for doing 12-hour days every day. We start bright and early in the morning, and they'd get done at like 4 to 5 p.m. And so we got overbooked to the point that I had to hire like an afternoon crew, and I was leading that crew because they weren't trained in. And so again, it was like kind of like almost back to that first season feeling again, where I did it full time, where I'm doing it in the water, doing the work. And then I'm having, a couple of guys help me with like working in the shallows and hauling the weeds out. And so, during that season, that June last year, I mean, I was working, more than I've ever worked before. And, the beautiful thing is, like, my wife totally supports me, totally understands it's really seasonal, and she gets a lot of time back, with me in the winter and in the off season. Right? There's a big trade-off there, but I would say that that's really the only season where it's like, hey, we know what we have here. We know we have to make 60% of our revenue, in that month and a half. And so, this year I think we're probably better prepared for, hopefully for there to be less turbulence. But again, like for me, it's like, I'm always sales first, like production, second. Like, we will figure that out. And for me, I have that recruiting background where I was able to put a team together in a couple of days. Like, truthfully, like 2 days, I think I had an afternoon crew like identified and hired. And so that side of things, I'm confident I can build a team. I would say there's a lot of areas as a small business owner where I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing here, and 100%. I don't have experience doing this. I've never done this before. I'll figure it out. But I don't know what the best path for it is. When it comes to putting a good team together, that's something I'm really confident in my ability to do. So it's like, let's go out and sell every job we can. 100%. And we will, we'll make sure that we follow through and execute on those jobs. But
so full circle on this, like you talked about a really good point, like we don't know what we don't know, and, figure it out as we go. But like one thing that I noticed, and just even hearing you now, that, you're not the same person even a few years ago in many aspects, right? And so I think we're all hopefully all moving forward. But and I like to attribute, the fellowship we had in a peer advisory forum.
Absolutely.
And it's a couple key things, but I think highlighting your business knowledge, and being able to kind of go deeper into solving bigger, more complex issues. That's one. Two, how are you able to balance what you just described, but things that maybe you are making trade-offs, but how, you're able to now have empathy for your wife because you see other men that are sharing their struggles in this. And then the third is bringing your faith into your business. And so, like, what I love about a marketplace ministry, trusted advisor forum model, and I lead one as well, is this idea that we are becoming better disciples and discipling one another, sharpening one another, so we can carry it into our homes, we can carry it into our workplaces, and we can best steward what we've been given in our businesses. Yeah. So I just quick highlight, I'm curious, what has been the value for you in it being in a peer advisory group now almost 3 years, like you mentioned, and all of those areas?
Yeah. Oh man. And yeah, it's been it's been amazing. Like I have so much respect for that group of advisors that we have, with our CBMC group. And it has been something that like I was just felt honored to have a seat at the table, like with these guys. I'm younger. I would say at the time, like I felt like I don't really feel like I have a real business, and like, but felt like, I'm like, I just was so early on in it. And these guys like were super welcoming, and I've learned a lot of good business advice. But like the thing, I was not interested in just joining a business group. For me, it's like I wanted people that were grounded in truth and that could give me perspective and give me advice on not just like, business topics, right, but like can take that holistic view of your life and speak truth, and like, and if you need to like have your perspective adjusted, like those guys are willing to do that for you. And I've been able to bring, things to the group, share things with the group, and get really good godly counsel, with raising kids and marriage and business and, community. Like it really has been a huge value add in my life. And I knew that when I started my own business and I was taking it like seriously, I knew I needed that group of men. And like, thankfully I have an amazing church family around me. I have, great community at Grace Church. That's where we go to church. And so I have like just this group of brothers that helps hold me accountable, in a lot of areas of my life. And, but I knew that CBMC group would be an extra value add because it's that dedicated time. It's 3.5 hours of sitting down, and like somebody presents a host issue and like we all go through our updates, and there's so much opportunity for like collaboration and opportunity to, just have guys pour into you
100%.
And for me, it was, the extra value out of like, these guys have a little bit more experience, and they have, not just professionally or in their careers, like they have done a lot more than I have, but they also have kids that are 5 years older than my kids or 10 years older, and they can give me more perspective, and they've been through the same things in their marriages that like I'm going through, and all those things that just, it's invaluable. And to have that dedicated space to come there, talk to those guys, and like, just I feel like I'm welcomed and I'm just a peer in that group. But again, like it's like humbling for me to have a seat at that table because of the wealth of knowledge and wisdom and experience that's there. So, can't say enough good things.
It's incredible. And I think what goes to show you too is like, there's no replacement for having a church where you go and have corporate worship, right?
Yeah.
And having a small group is certainly part of that. But there's a massive difference between a small group that meets for an hour and it includes sometimes your wife, or it could be just men. But the difference is usually just something you study, very specific, and that's great. But the outpouring of dealing with life requires time and it requires depth, right? And I think what you're talking about is highlighting where there's a space where foundation and faith in Christ is center. And that means if you have that figured out, the responses people are giving you are through the lens of a kingdom-minded person, right? That it's not this make money or, live the best life. Certainly we want to live a great life, but how it improves our ability to share and pour into others and take that back to our workplaces, so invaluable. But then the reality is to actually care, right? To show up with the guys actually challenging you to think differently. You only get that with relational equity, right? And that doesn't happen in a small room or in a context. If you don't even a business owner, you can't challenge someone in business if they're not in that themselves. Right.
Exactly.
So take that, right? And so, but I think what's important is this wasn't something that just, you fell into 30 years ago and you've done it your whole life. You had to come to the realization that you needed others in your life, right?
Yeah.
So what I want to do is kind of journey back, right? And so what's important is we think about like getting to where we're at, even realizing now this isn't the end goal. This isn't even the destination. In fact, it's probably not until we're dead, right? Until we get to hear, well done, good and faithful servant.
Right.
But we had a chance to just touch base a little bit before and broke down a couple things in your life. And like you, I grew up in a Christian home. Like you, I also wanted to do me. And so I want to unpack it a little bit. And as an ADHD, high capacity, I want to take it all on. Like there was some stuff inside too that is like, I want to do what I want to do. And I want to have some freedom to do that. And so your journey was, grew up in a Christian home, did Christian school, did homeschool, but then back to Christian school, had a great foundation, but yet still found things of this world, maybe not so much there, but the desire to explore life in college was, hey, freedom, right? I had this tight set of rules. So let's unpack it a little bit for you. You know, fell into, I'll let you tell your story, but what I want to bring out of this and highlight and point out is that we all have these journeys, and even if we come from faith, we're still inch by inch growing as long as we're focused on Him, right? And so and this is where I want to start, is very specifically the podcast Successfully Unsuccessful comes from this idea that the measurement of success, or how we define success, often is so worldly, but through the eyes of a believer. And at 21 years old, your own cousin asked you this question. And so I want to start there and say, what does success look like? And how do you answer that in this moment? And maybe give us a little context up to that. Because the rest of it has put you on this lifelong seeking Him, which again, full circle, it's all about Him. And we start there, but I think this is related to most people, a lot of people's stories who want to just, they fall back into the Lord, and it's not by accident. So how did you define success then? And how did you get to this place where this happened, right?
Thanks for teeing it up. Really the best answer for it is just to like share my testimony, share my faith story. And I think it's so cool. Like just the premise, successfully unsuccessful, like, and what is the definition of success? That was the question that really catapulted me into an experience with God for the first time, really meeting the Lord face to face. But my story starts just, at the beginning. I grew up in a really strong Christian home, amazing parents, pursuing the Lord. They weren't perfect, but they were, if I can recreate what they did in the home, I would do it in a heartbeat. And so I have a lot of respect for my dad and my mom and how they raised us, and we grew up in the church. I went to Chapel Hill in Chanhassen from up until third grade. I was homeschooled from third grade to seventh grade. Went back to Chapel Hill in eighth grade, and then went to Southwest Christian High School in high school, and graduated from there in 2012. And then I went to Calvin College in Grand Rapids, Michigan for my freshman year. I played hockey out there, and that was really like my first opportunity where I'm making decisions independently. For me, I did the Chapel Hill, Southwest, and I was considering Bethel or Northwestern, and that's like where all my friends were going. And for me, I just like wanted a new experience, wanted some freedom, wanted to like just do it on my own.
I relate to that one.
Yeah.
Move away. Right.
Yep. Exactly. So I went out there, and I had a good experience there, but I definitely started, I think, just like, I was on the hockey team. I had a good like brotherhood of friends. I actually got really lucky too with like my roommate out there, ended up being like one of my best friends, like super cool dude. But I got sidetracked by by partying, and started really smoking weed and doing a lot of that. Got caught up in pornography, like just really was struggling with some of those things that 19-year-old boy, like just like I'm trying to figure life out. And I ended up transferring from Calvin down to Grand Canyon University in Phoenix. And really the summer between my freshman and sophomore year, I think, is where like I started kind of going off the rails a little bit. I was smoking weed like every day, like 5, 6, 7 times a day. Like that's all that my life really was, which is kind of funny because I think that was the year I started the business. Maybe it was the year after that, but started Scuba Weed Control. But it was, I was really focused on just my own enjoyment, maximizing just every day and like living for myself, right? It was all selfish pursuits. And it got to the point where like ended up just kind of like I was selling weed, I was dealing, I was, just really starting to live more of a dangerous and, like I said, just kind of going off the rails a little bit, just going in too deep. So ended up going down to GCU, and that sophomore year, that first semester was, my grades started to slip. I was never a good traditional student, as you talked about, like we're both ADD, like I'm not a guy for the classroom, but I was always like able to, I was able to do fine in school. And when I applied myself, I was more than capable. But my grades really started to slip. I started, my parents were catching on, that something was going on. And, I didn't have a hockey team, or I didn't have like that instant brotherhood that I always had in the past. At Southwest Christian, I had amazing Christian friends to kind of keep me grounded. And we were squirrely, we were rowdy, but like we never, I would say that like we were good kids and like knew what the truth was. And for me, I didn't have that, going into a new environment, didn't have like a sports team that I was on, that was the first time in my life where I didn't have that. So I was kind of
seeking, right? You were looking for some community in ways.
Yep. Yeah. And really the only thing that what was driving my community was partying and drinking and, smoking. And so that was the crowd that I was running with. And as you know, it's like, you're only as good as the people around you. And like, I mean, I just really kind of got lost during that season of life. And fast forward to the end of that semester, I came home for Christmas break and still was smoking quite a bit. And my best friend growing up was my cousin, and we would get together like and smoke. He went to a school here in Minnesota, and we would reconnect, over summer break and Christmas break and things like that, and just get together and hang out. And we would always smoke a lot. And at Christmas Eve, we're up at my grandparents' cabin, and all my family's up at the cabin.
The whole extended group, right?
My parents, my grandparents. So it's my grandparents' cabin. We have 4 sets of aunts and uncles that are up there, and I think we had like all 16 cousins, or at least like 14 of the 16 cousins were there. And this is like 2 a.m. on Christmas Eve, and we're downstairs, like we're in the basement, and there's like a garage that was connected to the basement down there. And my cousin and I are smoking in the garage, and I think some of the other boy cousins were awake and they were watching a movie downstairs, but everybody else was asleep. And my cousin asked me a question, and while we were smoking, we were just sitting there, having like one of those like high thoughts, and he asked me how I would define success. Like what does success really look like, or what does that mean? Like, what does the word success mean to you? And it was one of those moments where I realized that I had that I just was so selfish, and I was just chasing, nothing but my own selfish desires. And I looked at all the role models I had in my life, starting with my dad and my grandpa, both my grandpas actually, and even like some of my uncles. Like, I have all these godly male Christian role models, something that like some people can't say that they have that, and I have them in spades. And like, I have a front row seat to what does a successful life look like. And I knew that a successful life wasn't just making a lot of money or business success. Like, I knew that it was deeper than that. And I think during that time, he asked me that question, I really examined, like, what was it about my dad? What was it about my grandpa that you could look at their life and know that they were successful? And like, if you understood them as a person, like, what was it? What does a successful life look like? And for me, what I realized was the common thread was that they were living for the Lord. They were living for something bigger than themselves, and they were under God's authority. They were sacrificing their wants, their needs, their desires, their earthly, sinful desires. And they weren't perfect, but they were under authority, and they were pursuing the Lord first, and the rest of their life was just falling into line. And of course, there's things that could be improved, but like, they were successful in business. They had good marriages. They had families that loved and respected them. They had, fruit in their life. And so for the first time, I realized that's what success is. It's not just maximizing your pleasure. It's not just pursuing your own selfish desires. And so I realized that in that moment, and really,
like, you're flooded with thoughts, right? This is just, as this question was asked, it's just downloading you. And I'm actually curious though, was your cousin seeking this question for himself, or was he just asking you? Because I'm curious if you ever had to respond. Did you respond? Because all this goodness you're sharing now was truth that you knew, but did he know this truth?
Yeah, I think he did. I mean, he had the same kind of front row seat.
Yeah.
With like, I think we were in a very similar place, like where I think I was talking through some of it, but I was also internalizing a lot of it and just trying to process, like, I don't know if I had a good way to respond in the moment. So we were really close. We had a really good friendship, and he was kind of in the same spot as me, where we were both like, we're the same age, and we're just kind of trying to find ourselves.
What are we doing here?
Yeah, what are we doing here? Like, we're smoking, we're drinking, like, and it feels shallow. And like, what are we really here for? And what does success mean? And so like, I think I maybe shared a couple thoughts, but I got to a point where I realized that my life, like if I'm looking at my grandpa and my dad, and then I'm thinking about my own life and how they are pursuing things that are greater than themselves. They are pursuing the Lord first and foremost. And I was realizing in my own life, all I had ever done to that point was pursue my own selfish desires. And I like felt that emptiness, that unexplainable emptiness, and the guilt and the shame that comes with like, I have these role models in my life and other people don't have that privilege. And like, if I throw away this opportunity to like, you know, I have the path laid out for me and all I need to do is walk in it. And so I just felt so empty, so like full of sin, and I knew what was right. And I've just been pursuing my own, you know, evil desires. And in that moment of like pure emptiness, like I just was like speechless. And I literally felt God just right next to me in the room. And like, I felt like his arm around me and him just saying like, Connor, I still love you. I still choose you. I died for you, you know? And like, just thinking about that, like it made me just like break down. I just like lost it. And so that was the moment where like I experienced God's love, God's presence. And yeah, so then the fallout from that is I like lost it, and I was like crying. I like couldn't control myself, and was just overwhelmed with like the presence of the Lord. And you know, I ended up like I was like screaming and like crying and like couldn't stop crying. And like I woke up everyone in the house, and like my brother was downstairs and like my cousins were downstairs, and they were trying to like calm me down, and like I couldn't be calmed down. Like I was like just beside myself. And I knew like in that moment, like my parents were upstairs sleeping, and I knew like I have to go apologize to my parents. And it was like 2 a.m, and like went up there, scared the crap out of them. They had no idea what was going on. And like everybody thought I was like tripping on something. And it was like, you know, I was like, and they're like asking my cousin, like, what did he take? Like, what did he smoke? And it's like, dude, it's the same stuff we've been smoking. Like they didn't realize I really had just like had an encounter with like the creator of the world. And yeah, it was like so real to me. And I knew like God was telling me I have to go up, and like today's like the day. It's like it changes for me today. And so
you hit this bottom point, right? When you realized how you had been living, and you felt the comfort of the Holy Spirit really just say, I still love you. Yeah. I still choose you, right? These are the words I think you shared with me.
Yeah. Yep.
And clear as day, you remember feeling just overwhelmed with, what have I been doing?
Yes.
I got to make this right. Like what, like immediately, right? And so like what's interesting and so powerful and what you did next, and this is what is an amazing about our God we serve, and think about the original beginning of sin, right? Adam and Eve, I share this so often, but Adam and Eve hiding behind, you know, the tree, hiding behind a bush, and the God's walking in the garden looking for them after they had just sinned, and they're full of shame, so full of guilt. And it's because they know they did something and have not been living, or did something where they were exposed, right? Yeah. And it got to that point, and God just says, I know where you are. I'm right here. And he just wants to love. And you felt the presence of that hug. What is important here then is realizing that confessing what you have done, right, is the next step. So confession, and then repentance, right? And so you experience this in its perfect form, where you get to this place where you were shameful and really standing outside yourself, looking at yourself going, you know what? I don't think I'm worthy, but this God showed up and told me I am. Yeah. And immediately you went to your parents to make it right. Yeah. And like powerful. Like, think about that, right? A dad who gets woke up in the middle of the night by his kid, the first reaction, like if my kid's 5, is not to come in and say, why are you yelling? It's, you're scared, I want to comfort you. In this case, you woke up, came to him and said, I want to tell you I'm sorry because I haven't been living the way that you raised me, or whatever, right? Yeah. And because you knew they were concerned for you, you knew they loved you, you said, I want you to know that I'm going to change. Right? Like this is the perfect redemption story, right? How he pursued you. And in that moment of high times, great times, sure. But we realized in our own consciousness that we need to do something different, and not in a shameful way. It was like, I got you. There's nothing you can do. I tell my daughter all the time, and this is what changes the game. You get on your knee and say, I will love you no matter what. There is nothing that you can do that will change that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And I'm sure your parents responded that way once they realized that you were coherent and actually ready to talk. Right. But okay. So this massive 180 happens. Everyone's awake.
Yep.
You eventually go to bed. You have to wake up in the morning and come back to regular life. What the heck happens next?
Yeah. It was a long, it's a long story of like up and downs since then. But like, yeah, that first morning waking up was the most like full of shame I have ever like been, like that guilt, like waking up and like people just like all my cousins, my whole family, like just like wondering what happened. They're like, dude, what happened last night? You were like, what were you tripping on last night? And like people just,
that's what they assumed because they knew this Connor, they're just poking holes at this version. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was like I didn't really have that many answers. I knew like what the experience was, but nobody was
couldn't
like
explain it.
Yeah, I couldn't really explain it, and I mean, I just really, I think I was like just life changed for me that night, and I didn't really know how to articulate it, and like even like with my parents in the when I went to like say sorry, like I just kept saying I'm sorry like over and over, and like just was a mess, and they just were like. We ended up having like another conversation about it, and but what ended up happening is I went back down to school and knew that I needed to change the people I'm hanging out with, cutting a lot of friends out and just start trying to figure out where to go from here, because I knew the experience I had was real, and the thing that really helped kind of cement my desire to continue to grow, because in that place I was really empty, I was really broken. I wasn't grounded in the truth. Thankfully, I had that background of being in the church, growing up, going to Southwest Christian High School, and I knew what the truth was, and I had like some of that in me, but I had no experience with God. I had no depth. I had no relationship. And so, I kind of there was like a week when I got back to school where I like didn't come out of my dorm, and I like just was broken and like felt like I had no idea where to go from here. And my mom wrote me a letter. It's like a 6-page letter, and I still have it to this day. And like the gist of what she said is like, she knew that these things were going on. And, it was like, she'd always love me and support me, but like, hey, Connor, I believed that God would like do big things in your life. And I still believe that. And that just like broke me. And, it just like, really helped me propel that desire, like to do something with my life. And like I knew that God had plans for me, and like but that letter, like I would just read that over and over, and so it was a long journey. Like from there, I didn't like cut all my friends out right away. I didn't cut all like substances out. I still had to kind of find my way, and there was a sanctification process, and still is. Like I'm definitely not perfect today, but I knew that I couldn't keep doing the same things I was doing. And, I was trying to stop like smoking. And for me, something that I have to just give God all the glory for is like, he really removed that temptation in a lot of ways out of my life, where I like couldn't get high. Like there was times where I would like smoke and like, I like couldn't get high, or like when I would smoke, like I just like my brain would just shut down, and it was like, it's hard to describe it, but it really like, I just think God kind of like dropped the curtain on that period of my life. And he's like, this is not what I have for you. Like you cannot keep living in this sin. And like, I don't even like still today, like, I'm like, you know what, maybe there's a place in the world for, medicinal use of it for in some ways, but it's not for me because that, like, and so there's no like judgment there.
Right.
But for me, it's like, I knew it was not what God had for me. He just cut that part out of my life. And so moving forward, I didn't have Christian friends down at school. I didn't have a support system. So I really like floundered that semester after, and it took till the summer. So Christmas Eve, all that happened. I had kind of that semester where I was really trying to figure out, oops, sorry.
You're good.
Yeah. So yeah, we had, I had that event with the Lord. I hadn't really met the Lord that Christmas Eve, then had that semester where I was really trying to figure things out. And then that next summer, I got plugged in with a Bible study, and rekindled some relationships with friends from Southwest Christian, got plugged into a Bible study, and met my would-be wife at that Bible study. And at the time I was dating a girl back at GCU, but got to know, my wife and her family. And I was like, hey, there's some cute girls at this Bible study. Like, I'll keep coming back to this. So, I got to know her, and she was a pastor's kid, and she came from a really strong family, and her faith was like, she was so grounded in her faith. And I knew, like, if I was ever going to like win that girl's heart, marry a girl like that, like, I need to start I need to start developing that relationship with God. And like, I already was pursuing that, was interested in that, but I think she continued just to challenge me in that way. So I got back down to school, and we started dating a ways after that. And then I actually graduated a semester early from college. So I graduated in December of 2015, and I knew I was going to run my business in the summer, Scuba Weed Control. So I had this like 6-month period of time where it's like, hey, I could get a part-time job and live at my parents' house for 6 months before I start my business, or I can do something like more of value with my time. And that's when the Lord called me out to YWAM, Youth with a Mission. And it was really clear how God called me out to YWAM, but it was the first time I would say, like, I heard the Lord's voice so clearly, or felt his calling so clearly. And so I ended up going out to YWAM in January of 2016. This was right after I got engaged with my wife. So I got engaged in December of 2015, and then went right out to YWAM. And so what my trip was it was 3 months of training, discipleship training, and then it was 3 months of outreach. So my discipleship training portion was at Kona, Hawaii, pretty sweet gig to be out doing a mission trip in Hawaii for 3 months. Yeah. Then we did, our outreach phase was in Nepal. And what we did was trek Bibles like across the Himalayan mountains to these really remote villages that had never seen like a foreign visitor. So they had never had anybody in that village that like wasn't from that village. And we reached these people with the gospel, and it was an amazing time. And like, really just that was like my foundational, like, I think
like regrounding in some ways,
exactly. Right? That's like the right word for it, is like, just was like regrounded, like, and like started to develop my own relationship with the Lord, and like hearing the Lord's voice, and, evangelizing like really for the first time, and seeing God move, seeing God's power. Like, we had some crazy stories from that trip, and, so that was really like, I think, what laid the foundation for me. And it wasn't just like head knowledge, once you start experiencing the Lord, seeing what he can do, then it's like, who he is, what his characteristics are, what his qualities are, you see them. Yes. And so from there, I guess that's really like the quick story of like where I've been. And, from there, there's been a lot of ups and downs, got married, started a business, have 4 kids, and it's just constant refinement. Yeah. And, like there's, I don't have all the wisdom. I don't have all, but like I told you at the beginning, like I'm kind of a guy that's just like jump in with both feet. Like, let's figure it out along the way. Like, and then I just pray grace over myself, like, especially with like my kids and my wife, but I'm like, I'm not going to get it right every time. Yeah. Probably get it wrong more than I get it right. But like, my heart's good. Like, God cover me with grace for like all the ways I get it wrong.
That's amazing, man. Well, a couple of things that stand out, and part of like what I hear you sharing, and God continues to do this in all of our lives as he refines us, right? And continues to process through becoming more like him, is conforming to his image and reconciling those areas that are not. And like a great start, a way of being motivated is when you're attracted to someone and realizing that you need to make changes, especially when there's this path you want to be on that's aspirational, when you have a partner who's there to challenge you to that aspiration, right? And so like I created a framework called the BEAST framework, and it really simply starts with belief and understanding that our identity in Christ, deeply rooted in him, starts to help us understand that transformational process, right? To become like him, but we become equipped. So we start walking with believers, and being equipped with scripture and abilities to disciple others and to preach the gospel and to share our faith, right? As we start applying those things we're being equipped with, we are also continuing to transform. We are applying it because we are practicing what we preach. We are using it. It's edifying. We are being edified through that process through him. But now the next layer, and this is where I think we met, is that this process now it's not just applying. It's like, I am a believer and I do the things I say. We all fall short. We all struggle. But when you now steward, so the SBEAS is stewardship, that we are knowing and recognizing we are called to great things, that we need to continue to understand our time, our talents, our treasures, the knowledge we have, the experience we have, and take it seriously, right? As a husband, you want to grow as a husband. As a father, you want to grow. It's your calling, right?
Yeah.
And when you do those things, that process equals transformation. That is the journey, right?
I like
that. I look back at my journey and it spells it. I look at your journey and I hear it. It spells it. And so like this idea of what we're describing is like, we all have this, especially as someone who wears, as a coach. You were our coach, currently a coach. And in growing up in a Christian home, you get to go back to your roots and help some of these kids realize some of these areas. But like, we take for granted the truth is in front of us, but yet we want to go discover it on our own, to realize how much we needed the Lord to then come back to him. And we just need that regrounding, right? And so like, your story is a perfect epitome of like the redemption story of our hearts, of our lives, and the ongoing transformation and the brokenness we all have to deal with, right? And so the fruit of all of that, I'm sure, right? Everything's perfect now. You got it all solved. I mean, a father of 4 young kids, right? In the thick of marriage, having a really demanding job in a season. As we close and start thinking about this, what would you say the Lord is really showing you right now around other men as you're stewarding life, stewarding your responsibilities, the call to step into this higher level of stewardship, right? Because for much is given, much is expected. And it's like, here, the reality is the 2 talents and the 5 talents. The 1 talent guy buries it and wastes it.
Right.
You might have been given 2, you might have been given 5, but the moral of the story is it's expected to deliver at the level you've been given of your gifts, right? And so what is that call on your life right now? What is the Lord speaking to you, and how are you navigating your current challenges? Because I think I can promise you, I can relate to what it's like to be at home and what happens. Mom, Dad, all the insanity of 5, 4, it's pretty much there. What is the Lord showing you right now as you're preparing for this season again, going into the busy weed season?
Yeah, it's such a good question, and it is something that like the Lord has like reshaped my perspective quite a bit, because I think that starting a business and just like, I don't know, just maybe like some of the lies that the enemy like speaks over you, and like this maybe is relatable for some people more than others, but like I've always had this vision of like what I want to do in business, and it's becoming more and more clear to me what that is. Like, thankful, like, because of people like Josh Schrock and the CBMC crew that we have, and like my brothers that I have at Grace Church, like, and them just kind of helping me refine that vision and sharpening me, and also showing me what they're capable of, what I'm capable of. But for me, I always had these like lies, I think, that I started believing that like I'm not capable of X, Y, and Z. And but I have this vision now, and I know what that like, apart from the Lord, I can do nothing. But like with God, like he can
all
do.
All things are possible. Yeah, he can give me strength.
Yep. And so anyways, I think like I've had some opportunities recently that have, I've been wrestling with the Lord about them. One of them was, I had a friend, actually the guy that helped me originally start my business, that guy that I told you that was working with me on Tuesdays and Thursdays. He just recently got married out in Scottsdale, Arizona, and he asked me to officiate his wedding, which was a huge honor of mine. And I was really quick to say yes, but as I started to prepare for that, I was getting into what do I want to say, during the message, and like what do I want this message to be about? And I felt like there's a million different ways I could take it,
100%.
And I'd never done this before, so it's my first time doing this, and I was wrestling with the Lord. And for me, as you know, I'm ADD, like I need to move around, and like the way that I think is by like moving, and I go on like prayer walks, and that's where I feel like I hear from the Lord. I hear like the Lord's voice, and I was really just kind of like wrestling with God and saying like, even like why God am I the one that's like called to do this? Like I don't feel equipped for this. Like I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to write this message. Like I want to do it, but like, I don't, why am I called? And I just felt like the Lord said like, because you're willing. And I'm like, wow, that like stopped me in my tracks. And I was like,
that's big.
That's all we need is like to just walk in like the obedience and like, and God will equip us. Yeah. And so like, that's, I think like what I have like recently been learning and growing in is like, we just have to be willing. And like, I was honored to say yes, but then like realizing like what I was saying yes to, I was like, man, I don't want to just like be anxious about this or, and it's a big deal. I want to do it the right way. I want to honor the Lord. I want to honor my friend and his spouse. Like I want to make sure that everything I say is in accordance with God's word, all that stuff. And I just was like feeling the weight of that calling. And amidst like all that anxiety, I was just wrestling with God and just saying like, hey, like, what if I blow this? Or like, what if I embarrass my friend? Yep. Yeah. Yep. And I felt like the other thing God was really telling me is it's like, he was saying like, okay, like if those things happen, would you still do it? Like, would you still do it for me if I'm calling you to do that? And it was like, again, it was just like, yes, God, I would. I'm willing. And so that's just like the theme of like what I've been learning recently. And it has reshaped like the way that I think about my business and like my family and like just the everyday like pursuit of, trying to do it all, right? Like, being a family man, and honoring God with everything I do and running a successful business. Like there's so many priorities, but like if you can simplify it, like, Lord, I'm just trying to be obedient to you. And like, I want to be in your presence and like whatever you have for me, it's a yes on my end. It's a yes. And I'm just going to bring, like, if I've got 2 talents to bring, that's what I'm bringing. If I've got 5 talents to bring this area, that's what I'm bringing. Like it's all yours. And I'm willing. And so like, I think that's just like giving me peace in my heart that I'm not the most capable guy, but like, thankfully God doesn't call the capable, like he equips the willing. And so like, that's what I've learned.
Well, and what you're saying is true because as you're wrestling with this and it's like, we are acknowledging our weakness and it's like, he's calling you to step into that. And if you're willing, he's going to show up, right? He's going to show up. And then the other part of this is we're reminded in Colossians 3:23, right? Whatever we do, we should work willingly as if we're working directly for the Lord, not for human masters, right?
Love that.
And it's like, I'm showing up because I've been willing and I am able, and I trust that this is going to be something I'm used. And so because of those things, I'm going to do the best I can to steward what this calling is right now. And so you take it serious and it bears a weight, right? But we all bear that weight. And here's the thing, are we bearing and taking seriously the right weights, right? And this is where our orientation on that word. So if we go back to full circle on this, what does success look like? You knew vividly that you had a father and a grandfather and other men that had put God first, and the other things were added onto it, and those things came, and like, and all of us can poke holes into levels of what success means, right? But if we start with well done, good and faithful servant, and live a life that honors the Lord because we're doing everything as if we're serving Him, I've even been like scrubbing the things I don't want to scrub in my house, and wanting to be, haphazard or move fast and move on. And I've caught myself going, whatever you do, do it willingly. And I stop and I'm like, don't be a putz. Like, do the whole job. I'll pick up litter because I see it. It's like, this is my earth. This is his earth. Like, you don't do that if it's selfish. So now I'm like, the guy who's selfish, who gets angry because his kids aren't doing what he wants or because he can't get to do what he wants, this other side comes out because it's not me. The strength of him is like, wow, I am the vessel at which he can flow through, right? If I am called to that, like, I can do anything. Tell me where to go. And then the beautiful thing is, and this is the last part of this whole thing, is you going to YWAM, the part you didn't share, which I thought was powerful, is all the reasons you chose not to go. The idea of this trip, the one you're holding in your back pocket, is you're going to skip 6 months of working out. And yet you're being called to something that no one's ever done on this journey to get to a place in the mountains that no one's ever been. And you're like, ooh, I can do that one. the Lord will give us the desires of our hearts. And so it's like, I want to be challenged. I want to keep up with this. He's like, you don't even get it, dude. I got a plan for you. Like, and it's better than your plan. Your plan is okay, right? My plans are okay. And every time I realize, like, geez, Josh, just let go, you know, just let him have it. It's like freedom, right? And like, I got to go do all these things today. Anxiety builds. Like, Lord, just give me the strength to do it now and do it well, right? Holy cow. He showed up today, man. And, you know, you never know what you get when you get a chance to talk with another brother. And when the Lord is moving in the room, you feel it. And obviously having a chance to blow a few, you know, nostrils out and wipe some things down. I appreciate you sharing your story because first, like you said, you're willing, you know, and you never question it. You showed up, you're prepared, ready to tell your story, and God's going to use it. I just pray that the opportunity for others to take and listen and lean in with what you're describing here is like, just be willing, be willing to go. Right. And if no one's willing to go, how can anyone hear? Right.
Exactly.
And if that's the case, then we're all called right where we're at. Just be willing. Just be willing. So appreciate you sharing today. Glad you made it up here. Best of luck in the season.
Thank you.
We're ready for grind time. So everyone, thanks for tuning in. I appreciate you hearing out the story of the successful in Connor's life. And we'll look forward to seeing you on the next one.